power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
You know, man, it could be worse. A woman could cut off your penis while you're sleeping and toss it out the window of a moving car.
There's always that. I don't know, it's just when you buy furniture, you tell yourself, that's it, that's the last sofa I'm gonna need. Whatever else happens, I've got that sofa problem handled. I had it all. I had a stereo that was very decent, a wardrobe that was getting very respectable. I was close to being complete.
Shit, man, now it's all gone.
All gone. All gone.
Do you know what a duvet is?
Comfort.
It's a blanket. Just a blanket. Now, why do guys like you and I know what a duvet is? Is this essential to our survival in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word? No. What are we then?
Consumers.
Right. We are consumers. We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession. Murder, crime, poverty, these things don't concern me. What concerns me are celebrity magazines, television with 500 channels, some guy's name on my underwear. Rogaine, Viagra, Olestra.
Martha Stewart.
Fuck Martha Stewart. Martha's polishing the brass on the Titanic. It's all going down, man. So fuck off with your sofa units and string green stripe patterns. I say never be complete. I say stop being perfect. I say let's evolve. Let the chips fall where they may. That's me, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's a terrible tragedy.
No, it's just stuff. It's not tragedy.
Well, you did lose a lot of versatile solutions for modern living.
Fuck, you're right. No, I don't smoke. My insurance is probably gonna cover it, so. What?
The things you own end up owning you. But do what you like, man.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe. A mighty tech show, loved by anarchists, feared by authoritarians. As Sovryn Tech's legend grew, peace settled across the galaxy. On planet Earth, a union of egoists was formed. Together with the open source, retro gaming, and liberty-loving communities, they maintained peace throughout the universe. Until a new horrible menace threatened the galaxy. Sovryn Tech was needed once more. This is the podcast of superhost Dr. Brian Sovryn. Specially trained and sent out into the galaxy to bring back Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe.
So it begs the question. When Britney Spears is singing in Work Bitch that I make it bubble up, call me the bubbler. What the fuck is the bubbler? Like, what's a bubbler? I'm baffled here. I don't get it. Oh, well. It's the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, the bubbler. No. I mean, you think about these things sometimes, right? Like suddenly it'll strike you. This part of a song that's a bit of an earworm. You're not sure what the fuck the lyrics are. Okay. Which is incredibly common in music today. In fact, does music today even really have lyrics? I guess it probably doesn't have meaning, that was ultimately Mrs. Sovryn's response to my question of what the fuck the bubbler is. Is that it was just the music, just the songwriter going for a certain sound or alteration. But anyway, really, I can't even, I don't know, maybe there's like a chorus that has at best 4 to 6 words in music today. Then beyond in pop music anyway. Beyond that, I have no idea what the fuck is being said. Anyway, Dr. Brian Sovryn here with you for your latest episode of Sovryn Tech. And while we're talking about pop stars that say the damnedest things, how about, wait, what is this? Ye buys Parler? Wait a minute. Did you put this in? Who put this story in? Who the fuck is Ye? Oh. It's Kanye? Oh. All right. Well, so anyway, Kanye West, rap star, is an ex-husband to Kim Kardashian, is purchasing the conservative, the right-wing social media platform, Parler. How, we're in the foreplay here, and I don't even want to know about Yee's foreplay. Oh boy, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is? Where's the? Maybe I should look it up. Where's the right wing outrage? Where's the conservative outrage that a guy like Kanye is going to own your social network? Like, I mean, have you listened to his music at all? Not necessarily by choice, but I certainly have. None of that shit sounds very, listening lyrical content, none of that really sounds much to me like Christian or conservative values whatsoever. Of course, I know he got in trouble recently because, and rightfully so, getting a little shitstorm on him. Why? Because he's saying derogatory, he's being anti-Semitic straight up. He's saying derogatory shit towards Jews, arguably towards other black people. Is that why it's acceptable for conservatives and right wingers? Because wait. If he's talking shit about Jews, how does that fit in with Ben Shapiro? Don't you all worship him? He's a Jew, like myself. I'm confused. Does anybody have any standards anymore on either side? Doesn't look like it. Oh well, have fun on Parler. There's your savior, right? Oh yeah, Parler. Well, this is going to be social media done right, owned by Kanye West. A walking train wreck, if he even ever walks. He's not if he's in the metaverse, because oh no, wait, they do have legs now. They do have legs, but that whole jumping up and down thing, as insensitive as that fucking shit was staged. It wasn't even enacted by the code itself of the platform. Oh, what the fuck? Anyway, well, speaking, of course, we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg and CEO Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and that stunt that was being pulled with the announcement of the Quest Pro, which kind of upended anything that Microsoft was talking about for their Surface event that was on October 12th, 2022. We're going to get into a review of that here in the Foreplay as well, which I told you that I would in previous episodes. But before we get into that, let's talk about Zuckerberg. The Quest Pro, look, we'll get into a larger conversation around the metaverse, virtual reality, and all that bullshit in an upcoming Sovryn Tech. But what I found even more interesting to come out this week from the mouth of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, is he basically went on the attack against iMessage, against Apple's iMessage. Now, this is getting, frankly, a little strange, because you have Google and now Facebook going after Apple's iMessage. Now, I'll get into more of what Zuckerberg said in a second, but I'm starting to wonder about this. Like, is Apple going to come next? And, to their credit, at least they're striking at the root, as it were. Like, why is, say Google's messaging apps or whatever failing? Why is WhatsApp perhaps missing its, I don't know, next 2 trillion users or whatever? They know that it comes down to iMessage. iMessage likely has the keys to grandma, and so you've got to do something about iMessage. I mean, it's amazing the attack that's going on. They even, Facebook or WhatsApp or Meta, whatever the fuck we should call these companies now, essentially, like, are we ever going to get used to calling it Meta? I guess I'll call it Meta. Just like Google, we should call Alphabet. I guess we'll get to that. So anyway, Meta did an ad where, like, people are going into this, parcel store. They're going into this, like a P.O. box, like a UPS store or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, I want to mail this out. And then the guy says, oh yeah, I'm going to send it via carrier pigeon. Like the guy behind the desk says that. And the person goes, wait, what? Why? No, I don't want you to do that. I don't trust that. Even though, frankly, carrier pigeons good luck the NSA getting their hands on something being sent via carrier pigeon. Carrier pigeon is actually really great. So Meta's sort of failing here because I would trust a letter getting sent via carrier pigeon way more than I would trust it being sent by the U.S. Post Office. Just saying, all that goes through a computer. But that aside, like they did, I mean, it's still funny, the point that they're bringing up, saying that, oh yeah, well with iMessage, if it's just SMS, it's not getting encrypted. It's not end-to-end encrypted and all this. And it's hilarious for, as we've talked about even in recent episodes of Sovereign Tech, it's hilarious for Meta to be arguing that, they're interested in privacy and that they care about privacy. I mean, what a bunch of shit. But let's read what Zuck had to say about why WhatsApp is more private than iMessage, which, again, I think is actually a fairly laughable claim. Let's see, here we go. Zuckerberg says WhatsApp is far more private and secure than iMessage with end-to-end encryption that works across both iPhones and Android, including group chats. With WhatsApp, you can also set all new chats to disappear with the tap of a button. And last year, we introduced end-to-end encrypted backups too, all of which iMessage still doesn't have. Okay, so feature set might be kind of accurate. There's a lot of parity in feature set between the two also because, one of the big reasons that arguably that people want iMessage to open up more, not just to be able to connect with grandma, I guess, but as Tim Cook, now kind of legendarily, or would that be the term that I would use? Now that he has notoriously stated that if you want to send HD video and HD pictures to grandma, get an iPhone. WhatsApp can send that, so can Signal, so can basically anything outside of SMS, which is effectively Android messages, and certainly Google is working on that, but their workaround is to send it via Google Photos, which I don't think is a viable workaround, because that means that your pictures have to get uploaded to somebody's server instead of being sent end-to-end, which fucks with all kinds of problems, especially if your argument is more about end-to-end encryption. Anyway, this is patently laughable for Zuck to make the claim that somehow WhatsApp is more secure than iMessage. It wasn't even 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, that WhatsApp themselves amazingly disclosed that, actually there were a couple of disclosures of a couple of CVEs that they posted, okay, on their own blog, that essentially, or at least for one of them, all a malicious actor had to do, to own your phone, take control of your phone, was, send a malicious video or start a video call, with you on WhatsApp. This isn't even getting into, Jeff Bezos getting cracked via WhatsApp. That's how those photos and whatever other messages leaked and everything. What was that, back in 2018? I think that occurred. There've been pretty much every year there has been a massive security issue with WhatsApp, at least one, if not more. So this argument is fallacious on the part of Mark Zuckerberg to somehow claim, and that's not even getting into the privacy. We talked about this way too many times. Okay, so WhatsApp uses the Signal protocol. But again, the implementation was not perfect, and it's all about the implementation. You can use the best protocol in the world, but if you've got backdoors working around, whatever those happen to be, the protocol doesn't matter. So this is nonsense. Now, obviously, I applaud overall, and this was a recent major subject. In fact, we're going to hit on some other major subjects throughout this entire episode that I've been bringing up over the past month. Like I agree that, okay, get people off of iMessage, because you as a computer/smartphone user want to be on services that are platform agnostic, meaning you don't want to be tied down to a specific piece of kit, to a specific piece of hardware, just so you can use a specific service, especially one as key as real-time communication, something like iMessage or WhatsApp or whatever. Now, we talked about this. That's ultimately the answer, because these attacks against Apple are probably just going to keep ramping up, and eventually it's likely going to turn into something in the U.S. Senate or before Congress, right? Or who knows? Maybe it'll start in Europe, right? Like the USB-C thing. That's a whole other conversation, and maybe one I'll get into. We'll see. But this is really, really important. Okay. And it's hard because at the same time, you generally don't want to use third-party apps as much as possible. Okay. Like that runs into issues. For example, say with smartphones in particular. Okay. With smartphones, if you are on an iPhone, okay, or if you're on Android. So if you're on an iPhone, what keyboard do I suggest you use? I suggest you use Apple's keyboard. If you are on Android, what keyboard do I suggest you use? I suggest that you use Google's keyboard. Why? Because especially if it's a stock Android device, okay, different story if you're running Lineage OS or a custom ROM. But with Android, if it's a stock Android device, or with iPhone, if it's not jailbroken, okay, Apple and Google on their respective platforms, they run those operating systems. They have total control of those things. And they can collect at the operating system level everything you type into your keyboard anyway. All right. So if your concern is, but I want to use a different keyboard because I don't want Google to see what I'm typing in, or vice versa for Apple, or, equally for Apple. No, you're on their operating system. You might as well use their kit. You might as well use their shit. Okay. Because they're already going to be able to keylog if they wanted to anyway. And absolutely they are. And you say to me, what proof do you have that they keylog? Predictive results. And you can say that they mix those up or whatever, but I mean, the keylogging capability is there. It is happening. Even if it's more on an algorithmic affair, it's happening. And you go throwing SwiftKey on there, and now you have Google and Microsoft, basically collecting everything that you type out. Why add on to that? So you want to be very cautious in what you use as far as third parties, okay, as far as third-party software. And so, obviously, as much as you can help it, do not install any, if you can avoid an entire tech giant like Meta, do that. Okay? Just honestly, if you're on, there was a great question in the Sovereign Tech Patreon Discord, Patreon only Discord, that I'm going to be getting into in the Wednesday Q&A this week. That's all about switching over from, iPhone to Android. I'll get into more of it there because there's obviously nuance in what I'm saying, but as much as possible, if you can avoid an entire tech giant, fucking do so. If you can avoid putting Amazon software in there, and I know that's hard as hell, right? Because everybody rocks Audible. Smartphone's a great way to listen to Audible. That becomes an issue. When it comes to entertainment services, it becomes a harder thing, right? Just okay, if you're on an Android phone, you can avoid Apple in its entirety, right? But then what about Apple Music, which, to be clear, is, for all intents and purposes, it's at least compared to like Spotify and comparable services, it's a solid music app. I might have had issues with how it was, backing up music, but that was some years ago and whatever. We're not talking about that here. It becomes harder with that. But this is my point, is that you really don't want to use third-party apps as much as possible, okay? When you're on a platform and you have a stock device, you want to basically run what's there, okay? Again, there's a lot of caveats and nuance to this, but that's my point. So anyway, with messaging, this is something so key, this level of communication and need for some degree of privacy anyway, right? Even if they're, even like I said, with key logging, is there really any privacy? Yeah, that's a great question. Like when, there's a reason Signal brings up the incognito keyboard. Is that foolproof? Not exactly, but then security today, there's no such thing as perfect security, right? Not today anyway, if there ever is. There's let's be particular. There's no such thing as perfect cybersecurity. There just isn't. What you have, or the best thing you can go for is, what we call the Swiss cheese model, right? Where, yeah, everything's porous, everything has holes, but when the more slices of cheese that you get in the way, the holes aren't all in the same place. And so attack vectors end up running into, walls of the cheese because the holes aren't uniform. So that's what we call, that's what we call like the Swiss cheese method of security. And that's basically what you're able to do now. But anyway, for fuck's sake, no, do not, if you're wanting to get above iMessage, Zuckerberg is wrong. WhatsApp is not more private, nor is it more secure. WhatsApp is not the answer. If you want to go with like Signal, or you want to go with, Telegram, or if you have to use Microsoft software, you're a Windows person or whatever, and hey, I get it. If you're really into that, Teams isn't that much better, but I'm just saying, there are options Facebook or Meta and this has been true for many years on Sovryn Tech. That's like the one company that you really can get out of your life. Don't bring it into your life if you can help it. Again, I know in other parts of the world, outside of America, WhatsApp is just the dominant force and you can't not use it. I understand. Okay. But in the United States, and certainly to get grandma onto something, holy shit, don't let her get onto WhatsApp. All right, let's move on. In fact, speaking of Microsoft, let's talk about, these companies, they're all full of shit. It's all marketing and it's all bullshit. All marketing out of Silicon Valley, out of the tech giants, is bullshit. You understand? We're going to get into a Google story, something that they're actually doing right as far as security. And basically the rule of thumb I'm going to give you is that unless the marketing comes with a fucking white paper, tell them to stuff it. They're lying. Anyway, let's talk about Microsoft, even though there's not much to talk about. I was, as to where, I wasn't that impressed with Apple's event, frankly. I wasn't that impressed. Apple's event might be interesting next year, right, with the iPhone 15. I wasn't that impressed ultimately with what, at least Google had a plan. You saw long-term goals being brought to fruition, or at least discussed, and somewhat implemented at Google's October event. With Microsoft's event, nothing. It was just, they talked about Teams. The Surface Laptop 5 is coming out, which is going to be Intel only, which I find to be very strange. Clearly, that's because they want to take advantage of Thunderbolt 4. But nothing really exciting there. Surface laptops have really fallen by the wayside anyway. Surface Pro 9, no, I mean, it's pure iteration. There's nothing really, exciting being done there other than, newer processors, newer this, blah, blah, blah. The Surface Studio 2 Plus. Now, the Surface Studio, when that was originally released, what was that? Was that like, was that 2018? 2017? Whenever the first Surface Studio, that was the Studio 2 came out in 2018. The Surface Studio, the original one in 2015, that was actually exciting. Remember, they had the Surface Dial, and like they were exploring new ways of computing that I thought was really, really fascinating. I don't think you're really getting that here. If anything, it looks like Microsoft is just envious of, well, okay. So Apple copied the Surface with the iPad and the Apple Pencil. But like the iPad and the Apple Pencil, and I can say from using it, like is such a brilliant combination when you're doing creative work. Clearly Microsoft is trying to double down on that, but I think Apple's kind of blown past them, at this stage. But that was also interesting that Apple and Microsoft are being buddy-buddy again, where there's going to be an iCloud Photos app and an Apple TV app, as well as an Apple Music app, like we were just talking about earlier, all for Windows 10 and 11. That'll be, essentially native apps, as well as I think they're going to be available on Xbox now. So, I wasn't really seeing anything too exciting with, like they showed off that Microsoft Designer where it lets you make art with AI or whatever, and that looked interesting, but okay, there's the perfect world scenarios that you see on display in these events. And then there's like, what does it look like in the real world? Right. And also the aforementioned Teams, there's accessories being built specifically for Teams. I don't expect that stuff to really do anything because they tried this with Skype before to have things be Skype branded and it never did shit for it. So there's just nothing exciting here. And that's a pity because, man, in 2015, Microsoft really had the chance to seize the reins in Silicon Valley. Fuck all the tech giants. But I'm just saying they were really, talk about a plan that they had. They had an amazing, what to my mind looked like an amazing plan, to really, really shake things up and have new form factors and have like a way that a direction, a vision. I hate to use that term because it makes me think of VC meetings and I just go cross-eyed. But they've lost that, as to where, like I was talking about either last week or the week before, where Google clearly has a vision. Now, granted, they're just copying Apple, but they're on that upward march, which is interesting to see. We're going to talk more about some, what Google's up to here, which actually is going to prove a theory that I laid out. And I want to say that was in last week's episode. But anyway, Microsoft has just completely dropped the ball, and they're continuing to do so. And Windows 11 is, there's just not a stitch of it that's helping with anything. I found it really interesting that Satya Nadella's co-announcement with Mark Zuckerberg basically upstaged the whole event. Dare I say, that's almost weird, and the problem is like Microsoft's not really in the position. That's all we want Windows. That's all we've ever wanted Windows to be, is just be the underlying platform that software we want from other companies, kind of runs on. Okay. Just make Windows run faster with less resources. That's all we need you to do, Microsoft. And that you can do Office and all that. And that's a whole other thing. Now it seems like they're getting rid of Office branding. Again, very, very odd. But, now it feels like they're just finding ways to like interact with the other tech giants. And the problem is Windows 11 runs like so much shit that, okay, if there's no Microsoft apps that are killer apps that you want to run, or that they only run on Windows, like you run out of reasons to run Windows, because like, why do you need that to be the platform for the apps that you want to run? Say like the Apple apps or whatever else. It just doesn't make sense. You know, what they've got going on here. They seem absolutely directionless. And whatever, I mean, I guess I'd rather have it be a company without direction than one with direction and it being malicious. But, yeah, fucking crazy. Anyway, we'll talk about a company that clearly does have a plan in the Story of the Week segment. I'll be right back with more. This is Sovryn Tech. Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Or are you just looking for a performance boost for your business's online presence? The answer is Agorist Hosting. Agorist Hosting is the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, even custom apps for your Shopify store, and more. All with security, reliability, redundancy, and privacy at the forefront. Oh, and those bleeding edge features? How about hosting your data in a decentralized system like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System? Good luck getting that from those other guys. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. Head over to agoristhosting.com to get started. That's AGORIST hosting.com. agoristhosting.com.
Story of the Week.
So speaking of a company with a plan, we are talking about Google /Alphabet /whatever. Google. This came as an absolute surprise to me, but it didn't surprise me in what it announced. And this is from October 12th. So October has been National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, or I don't know if it's national, but it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm sure that's international, at least it should be, or should be global, because fuck nations, woo, anarchy, baby. Anyway, this really did surprise me, you know, like that this was being worked on, but then fitting it into what I have described, what I've theorized that Google may be doing, it actually made perfect sense and frankly partly proves my point, or at least adds some fire to what I was saying. And what I was saying, this is, I believe, in the last episode of Sovryn Tech, was because I was reviewing the Pixel event and what it all meant. And what I was saying in that was it would be interesting, this is my theory, it would be interesting if Google was effectively saying with their Pixel line of devices and with Google Fi and, you know, all of that they were saying, okay, hey, you know, if you want to have privacy from Google, buy our Pixel devices and we're not going to collect data about you. But if you use Google's services on anything else, we're going to own your ass. You know, and we're going to collect every ounce of data that we can. And this seemed to, like, this announcement about what are now called VCNs, or virtual cellular networks, this seems to bolster that point. That, because here's the deal. So not that this technology, because it's baked into Android. Okay, the VCN concept is baked into Android. What it does is it's more than a VPN. You still want to run a VPN, and Google says as much. Well, here, I can read from the actual white paper, which that's nice to get those from a company. Anyway, I'll read here. Let's see. So actually, I have a story from 9 to 5 Google, which is linked in the show notes. Definitely worth a read. Let's see. This Fi, as in Google Fi, VCN subsumes and replaces the general notion of a cellular network on the device and will be used by any application sending internet data traffic over the mobile data provider. Compared to a VPN, it applies to the main, work, and secondary user profiles on a phone, as well as when tethering another device. The Fi VCN encrypts all internet-bound traffic using modern IPsec tunnels with AES GCM. In addition to what's happening on your phone, there are carrier network level components involved. Quote, this is directly from Google Fi. The Fi VCN uses blind signing to ensure full separation of your identity from your network traffic. With blind signing, it is possible to authenticate that a user has a valid Fi subscription, required to prevent abuse, and can therefore be granted access to the VCN service, but avoids any metadata regarding the content of internet traffic and internet services being used from being tied back to an individual subscriber. So, and that's the end of the quote. So Stallion here, this is really cool to bake this in at the operating system level, okay, where effectively the metadata and data in general, when you are using Fi, is collected in aggregate and spread in aggregate, meaning that, it's not tied to one user. It's just, it's one big trough of data, and you don't know. It's on spin cycle, right? As they would say. You don't know. They don't know. They can't identify you. Now, Google is in charge of the operating system and at the hardware level, on their device. Because this only works right now. This only works on Pixel phones. It only works if you have a Google Fi, if that's your, your telco. Okay. And the nice thing is this is also double blinding is effectively against not just Google or not just Google Fi, but also, T-Mobile, US Cellular, whoever, and whatever towers that a Google Fi subscriber, like myself, I have that, will be connecting to. So it's important, before we think this is all sunshine and rainbows, okay, it's important to recognize their language is incredibly particular, that Google Fi does not collect the data. Okay, so that's still leaving the opening of what we were talking about earlier during the foreplay on this episode, where Google, again, because they own the operating system, can still collect all of the data that you're typing in, all the apps that you download and all of this. But effectively, they're not doubling down in what Google Fi is collecting. Now, if you have your VPN on, like a Google VPN, all of that data that is being sent via VPN is going to Google's servers. What are Google's, what are their operating standards for their VPN? Are they keeping zero logs? Probably not. So Google is, in a way, still collecting this data. However, two things. One, again, Google's going to collect all the data they can from any Android phone running their version of Google or running their version of Android. Anyway, that's happening. Okay, so not a shock there. You're already dealing with the devil. But to keep this data even more so away from T-Mobile and other telcos that Google Fi is built on top of, great. Now, they do make it clear that because this is an experimental, or this is very new, that if needed to make sure that there is 100% uptime, they will default to the non-VCN connectivity standards, to whatever antennas or towers as needed. So, this isn't perfect at this point. I would love to see, say, an Android 14, because, again, this is a feature of Android. Also, it's something that has to be implemented by the telco itself. Okay. And I like that Google is, once again, trying to, shame other companies into doing what's right. Okay. And, making all of that data private. But I would like to see, say, an Android 14 where you could toggle that, okay, if the VCN can't connect, data gets cut off, or cellular service gets cut off. I would really, really like to see that feature, kind of like how in more modern versions of Android, you can turn off 2G connectivity for the most part. There's a little toggle that you can hit because, so fuck 5G, but 4G and 5G are far more secure by design networks than 2G ever was, right? As well as 3G, really, but 3G is getting phased out anyway. 2G gets kept because of its range, its impressive range, and there are areas where it's the best you've got, right? So, but the problem is that your baseband firmware, which we've talked about 10 billion times on Sovryn Tech, that the baseband firmware of your smartphone, of any smartphone, is a security exploit just always waiting to happen, because it does not get locked down, and in many ways can't be locked down, because your phone, a smartphone operates, a cell phone anyway, not just a smartphone, but a cell phone operates under the auspices of taking in whatever it receives at that level, at the firmware level. Again, that's by design. Is it a flawed design? Sure, but it's by design. So what bad actors will do is they will force your smartphone to operate on a 2G network by sending a specific signal. And at that point, then you're connected to, their network, and they're going to own your ass. So, turning off 2G. Now, when you toggle off 2G, at least in Android, I don't know about iPhone if that's a capability, but at least in Android, if you need to make like a 911 call or something like that, it'll go over 2G if it needs to. Like if there's an emergency call that has to be made, it's going to work anyway. But that's a very separate protocol on smartphones or on Android anyway. But it's a good idea to turn off 2G, if you can help it. Okay, unless you're in an area where, again, for some reason, that's all you've got. Actually, you're probably in the right area if that's all you've got, in my opinion. But regardless, while in the long run, I don't think this is necessarily stopping Google from collecting, data about you. It is certainly stopping other major companies like T-Mobile from collecting data about you, and that I applaud. And I don't imagine there's ever really going to be the demand for this. But I mean, this is also helpful, especially like when you go overseas, because this is going to work there as well. Because Google Fi, I mean, as I've brought up many times, part of the reason I use Google Fi is it has the best global coverage, meaning, and not just coverage, but the plan, meaning it doesn't care where you are in the world. They charge the exact same, no matter where you are. Like the Google Fi price is the Google Fi price, and that's the end of it. And they charge, actually I have the unlimited plan, but, they charge every 10 gig. They charge $10 for every 10 gig and everything. It's just pricing structure is great with Google Fi, which is one of the many reasons that I use it. This is just another one. But again, I don't know. It'd be interesting. Like Google Fi plays well with Motorola and Samsung phones. It'll be interesting to see if Samsung takes advantage of this. If not, this absolutely, I mean, again, you got to be on Google Fi for it to make sense. But if you're a Pixel user and on Google Fi, I mean, this is definitely something to applaud. The other beautiful part is, again, it doesn't get in the way of any of your other security features. For example, it won't get in the way of your VPN, right? Maybe you don't want to use Google's VPN. So instead you're using like Mulvad on your smartphone, which is a great idea. Or maybe, you have your private DNS set up as something different on your Android device, which I do. I have my private DNS set for Quad 9. And, like that, the VCN doesn't get in the way of the functionality of Quad 9. So, I feel, in a very real sense, I feel almost triple protected because I have the VCN at what is practically the hardware level. It's a software level. It's because it was built into Android 12, so you need Android 12 and up. But yeah, I have the VCN, then I have the VPN running, and then I also have Quad 9 running as my DNS. That's a pretty powerful package. I mean, something that frankly I really don't like to admit, okay? Because at the same time, I hate smartphones. Smartphones, like Android and iOS, as far as out-of-the-box security, especially considering what they can do out of the box, like the capabilities out of the box, okay, as compared to, say, like OpenBSD, are generally, and at a hardware level, depending upon what smartphones you're getting, like iPhones are at a hardware level, are incredibly secure devices. Pixel phones are incredibly secure devices at the hardware level, with the Titan M2 chip and so on. In fact, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. The point I want to make here, before I get into what I was just about to say, is smartphones from the right companies are actually far more secure than just about any computer you can buy. Any, PC, laptop, whatever. Okay, by design, like at the hardware level, they're really there. I don't like to admit that because I hate smartphones, but that's the reality of the situation. Samsung does a good job too. What I was actually going to recommend, Google put out a podcast called, and it's actually like a genuine podcast. It's not, you could say it's a 30-minute ad, but they're doing a whole series, and it's the Made by Google podcast. Again, this is part of them. This is their plan, right? They're going to make an ecosystem similar to Apple. And the most recent episode they did was on security, and that was dynamite to listen to. They have people there, very smart, who, for all intents and purposes, are implementing things right. I definitely recommend listening to that if you want to, understand, especially with Pixel devices, and Android in general, what are things being implemented, into Android, and kind of what is the philosophy there. If I think of it, I'll link to it in the show notes, but I might not think of it. But anyway, this is a step in the right direction. This is a way that telcos should be setting up their cellular networks. I don't think that they're going to. I think Google's going to stand alone in this, just as they do in many things. But it would be slick. I would like it. I know a lot of my listeners are huge Samsung fans, and I get it. Just like I have lots of listeners that are Apple fans. I have listeners who, have their favorite tech giants, even though I think, like me, they also want to say fuck them all. But like something that would be really slick, is if this was ported for Google Fi devices anyway. If this worked on basically any Google Fi device, including, say, like, a Galaxy S22, and then you ran, like, I know some people who run their S21 or their S22, they use Samsung DeX as their computer, and that's their only computer, and they just plug it in to, a USB-C hub, and away they go on a big screen monitor and everything, and they don't even pay for home Wi-Fi. They do everything through their smartphone, and they use it, again, they have Bluetooth, or they have actually, they don't use Bluetooth. They have again, with the hub, they have, with the dongle, they have a USB keyboard, USB mouse, and they just rock their smartphone like it's a computer. I gotta admit, fuck smartphones, but it's an attractive idea, right? But that'd be amazing to have a device like that running off of a network that's protected by, the VCN, and then, say, the VPN, and then also doing the right DNS with, like, Quad 9. Fuck, man. That's a pretty nice network setup you got going on, really. That is ultra minimalist stuff. But anyway, so Google Fi's VCN and Google Fi / Android's VCN, slick move. I'm not saying it's perfect, and even Google comes right out and says that there's no such thing as perfect security, like in their white paper. If you're of the more technical bent, I definitely recommend reading that, to grok this more. But it's a move in the right direction. You carry a smartphone, you're kind of owned anyway, but at least this is preventing, it's more of that Swiss cheese model, right? At least this is preventing, other telcos and other data from, like, your identity being attached to a device so much. It's the right moves. It's in the right direction anyway. Let's put it that way. All right. I'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. And, speaking of, like, how people have their workflows set up, we're going to get into that in our listener's choice. I'll be back with more. Woo!
Science, outer space, psychology, book and movie recommendations, fiction from the Sovryn universe, travels to points of mystery and the unexplained, and even spirituality? All of that can only mean one thing. the Sovryn Technica newsletter. By me, Ellen Sovryn, along with some stuff by that crazy man I call my husband, Dr. Brian Sovryn. It's the latest tool in your self-directed education, the education that really matters. If you want to cut through the crap of mainstream media ass clowns, sign up for the Sovryn Technica newsletter right now at sovryn.substack.com. That's sovryn.substack.com. The Sovryn Technica newsletter. Welcome to the future.
Listener's choice.
It is time for Listener's Choice, where you get to take control of the show. And this was something I think I must have teased it, at least according to their email I did. I must have teased it that I was going to talk about like what my little laptop work setup is like. And then they emailed me and said, yeah, I want to know, like, what's this about? And so, okay. I seem to recall that I was going to talk about it at some point. I think we were in some kind of subject that was relevant to the matter. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but this is something that I learned. So recently, of course, I've talked about this in recent episodes. But Mrs. Sovryn and I, we were going to be going on a road trip. Van lifing for at least a year. That was the plan. Again, circumstances out of our control. We were not able to do that. But, we were ready basically right up to the last minute. And, we prepped everything. We put a bunch of stuff into storage. We got everything set up. We were already living out of duffel bags. Like we had the whole, we were ready to go. And we ended up, because for a little while, of course, we were staying in Rob's museum. And Rob and Freebeard, which, boy, you want to hear about what we think about Andor? You just wait. We're going to get some TIE Fighter Renegades in here soon. But, there were times where we were still very much working remotely, as in we would go to Panera Bread or we would go wherever, even from like a park or something. And we would be tethering off of smartphones. We'd have our laptops. And we would be, doing whatever we needed to work remotely. And we had to have setups that were very compact. Now, admittedly, you can't get more compact than what Ellen did. Of course, she became the owner of my GPD micro PC, which she just loves that thing to death. And she still uses it all the time. When she's doing the Sovryn Technica newsletter, she's rocking it out on that wherever she happens to be on lunch break, whatever. Like it's amazing what she does and how dedicated she is to the Sovryn Technica newsletter. I love it. Anyway, so she has the micro PC, which you can basically take anywhere. She'll still pull out a mouse and use a mouse with it. And she can tether off her smartphone if she needs to, and whatever. And her smartphone, just to describe her setup a little bit. So the the GPD micro PC, not the greatest battery life. I think 6 hours is pretty great, which you can get out of it. Like, I think that's pretty good. Okay. Also, it's powered by USB-C. So, you can use a portable battery, like an Anchor battery, that you would use to charge a smartphone or an iPad or something like that, can easily charge the micro PC. So there's an advantage there, and that's something that has to be done at times. But also, her smartphone is part of the G-Power series from Motorola, which those have just those big honking batteries on them. That can get like 3 days, and I'm not kidding about that. It's not an exaggeration. You get like 3 days battery life out of it. So that's a great thing to have when you need to tether, and it's a great thing to have when you're on the road, for sure. Anyway, her setup is so fucking compact. It's amazing. A big enough person could put it all in their pocket. It's really impressive. Mine is not so compact, but I want to talk about, kind of my setup. Now, I'm going to go a little bit beyond that. And because, I still work remotely some days, and parts of this really help with that. but I will give you what does my desk, my work desk, and when I say work, I mean, yes, that does include some of what I do as far as my day job, but also mainly what I do for Sovryn Tech in general. I'll cover my gear here, okay? Of course, my main laptop, my daily driver, as it were, is my Dell 7480, or Latitude 7480, which, as I've talked about, so this has a 6th generation Core i5 in it, and that was on purpose because I wanted to run Windows 7 on the last best hardware, or close to best hardware that was out there. So this laptop, when I got it, I mean, as far as what it valued at, was probably about $300. Okay, 16 gig of RAM. I mean, it's as maxed out as it possibly can be. It has a 1 terabyte Samsung 860 in it, SSD drive. So, whatever the best can be put into this thing has been put into this thing. What did it cost when it was originally released, like in 2015, 2016? It was effectively a $2,500 laptop. I mean, this is a Cadillac laptop, right up there with your Carbon X1s. Again, at that time. Now it's cheap. Now it's inexpensive. But, these things were made, for enterprise environments. They're built to last and get repaired, which is also very important, right? When I was on the road, I needed a computer that I could go to like a university PC store and get it repaired, and that they would have the parts, right? I couldn't rely on getting a motherboard shipped from Amazon. Its only real flaw is that it doesn't have a removable battery. However, I did get an expanded battery for it. So I get anywhere between, depending upon workload, I get anywhere between 8 to 12 hours of battery life out of this thing with the expanded battery. Running Windows 7. And frankly, I think that's amazing. Like, that's mind-blowing, really, that it does that well. So, I have this maxed out as much as I can. As far as my smartphone, I have the Pixel 6, of course, not the Pixel 6 Pro, just the Pixel 6. And the battery life on that, especially when you have Google Assistant off and you turn off quite a few features, I can actually get more than a day out of it. Like, it doesn't do bad at all for what it is. Now, while certainly, running Windows 7 could be considered risky business. Now, as I've brought up a bit, many times, I am running Zero Patch, the software Zero Patch, that actually does a better job of patching, varying security issues and exploits than Microsoft does. And they know that their client base is largely Windows 7 users. But again, I still get security updates every second Tuesday of the month, just like every Windows 10 and Windows 11 user. I still get the same security patches you do, not from Zero Patch. I get them right from Microsoft. It's still a secure system. But part of my logic in getting my hands on a Pixel smartphone was having a device that did have the latest and greatest security built into it, because it was also going to be my networking device. So that was really key when I know I'm running what could be called aging hardware and aging software, or an aging OS, even though I would argue Windows 7 runs just as well, if not better today, than it did when it originally came out over, was that over 10 years ago now? Yeah. It's just so smooth. Anyway, so speaking of my setup, so like I described, kind of my logic behind and, what hardware I'm using. And I'm not going to necessarily get too much into the software other than, because I've already talked about that, like how to secure Windows 7. I've already covered that in previous episodes. What I want to talk about more is, again, the specific desk setup. So what I did especially for when I was going mobile, was, if you're sitting, say, at Panera Bread or Starbucks or whatever, you might not be able to. Again, my smartphone is kind of my notification hub, and that's really all I treat it as. Okay? Because part of the reason I'm using Windows 7 is I don't want notifications at all. Not when I'm doing work where I'm in front of a keyboard and I'm rocking a keyboard hard. Okay, in which you're not going to do that on a smartphone, right? Not on a touch keyboard. So I don't want notifications. That's one of my biggest problems with Windows 10 and 11, and even some Linux distros are pissing me the fuck off with their notifications. And what the hell was this? Did you see that oh man, fucking Ubuntu, or Canonical, I should say. They're putting like quote unquote ads for Ubuntu services in the terminal on new versions of Ubuntu. God damn. Look, the command line, the CLI, man, that's holy ground, Highlander. Like, you don't put anything in there. You leave that the fuck alone. Man, that's fucking stupid. Anyway, so to avoid getting those kinds of pop-ups and notifications and whatever else, it's part of the reason that I'm running Windows 7 on my main laptop. Yes, I have other laptops where I'm running Linux, I run OpenBSD, I'm all over it, okay? Open source, just, it's in these veins, you understand? Okay. Anyway, with work, especially for my day job, my smartphone is very much my notification hub, okay? And I want to be able to see it. Here's the thing. When you're sitting at, and if you're a big guy like me, when you're sitting at, like, say, a 2-seater table at Panera, or in a recliner of some kind, or whatever the fuck those chairs are at a Starbucks, depending upon the Starbucks, you can't just have these gigantic smartphones in your back pocket. You don't really want to have them sitting between your legs, frying your nuts, where are you going to put this thing? And you might not even have room, especially if you break out a mouse, which I don't blame you. You might not have room to even just set it down on the table, especially if you have, the most beautiful woman alive in front of you, like Ellen, who also needs space, right? And then you have some food you want to lay down or whatever. Like, it's a problem. So the solution, and I think it's a brilliant one, and I mean, there's like a cottage industry around this, is to have a little magnetic arm. And I mean, these things are full metal. They're going to add some weight to your laptop, but I think they are absolutely worth it. And I'll link to one of them in the show notes, the one that I use. Okay. But there's all different kinds and whatever. Anyway, your tastes and tolerances are yours. So it's a little arm that it almost looks like a pizza slicer because it has a magnet on one end, and the arm just kind of folds out to the left or the right. It's omnidirectional, whichever way you want it to go. I have mine that it goes to, for me, it's the right side of the screen. And it'll come with a little metal ring if your smartphone does not natively have, a magnet in the back of it. It's kind of like iPhones, I guess. And then, I put like the metal ring, I put it on a case, particularly for my smartphones. I use Pella cases, P-E-L-A. Pella cases are great. They're cases that are very slim. They got a good grippy feel to them. They're not the cheapest, but they're compostable actually. So when you're done with that case, even though it might not feel great to throw away $50, but you can toss it into the compost bin, which is awesome in my opinion. And so I use that and I put the metal ring on that. Of course, I'll have to peel that metal ring off before I throw it in the compost bin. But then the magnet of the arm, I fold the arm out from behind the screen of the laptop and it holds, and I just put the metal ring with the smartphone right up to it and it holds the smartphone. I mean, you can't knock this thing off. Like you can pat it. I mean, I have it set up like that right now. And that thing's never going to fall off. You can walk around with it and that smartphone stays on there. I mean, the magnet's amazing. Like I said, it does add some weight, but then it's holding the smartphone at eye level and kind of just being a screen extension for me. Now, another option that you could do with some modern operating systems is where you can actually screen mirror your smartphone wirelessly to Windows 11 or whatever. And I know that that's a possibility. But why? Like, to my mind, that's taken up some system resources. In fact, a lot on both sides of the equation, be it the laptop and the smartphone. I don't necessarily consider that viable. But having a smartphone as a second screen is game-changing stuff for me. And again, it's really handy when you don't have a lot of table space, or even when, like, if I'm sitting on a couch even, it's handy to have my smartphone just attached to, to the side of the laptop like that, where it's coming off the arm on the lid of the laptop. I mean, I do other things too, like with the lid of the laptop. Like when you buy a Trezor, like a crypto wallet, the hardware wallet, with Trezor, it comes with a little magnetic base that you can put on like the back of your laptop, and then you can kind of slap it on there and have it connected via USB-C. That's a handy thing to have as well. I know people just always think about putting stickers on their laptop lids, but actually it's, the hinges on a proper laptop are so strong. There's a lot of options to take advantage of on a laptop lid, in my opinion, and I do. So that was kind of my solution and I might even talk about other things that I did as far as this goes for mobile work when we get into the Climax, but I'll save that for that. As far as like at my desk, so here's the thing. Now, another kind of more recent philosophy of mine, this wasn't possible really when I was on the road, but it is now. I really, 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 like, I have data. I have files that I have kept since the 90s, like the whole 90s. Like I have files that once sat inside or once sat on a 250 megabyte, not gigabyte, megabyte hard drive in a 386 computer. I'm not kidding. In fact, I with Windows 7, when I was setting up this computer, I was like, I want to put on a great screensaver with Windows 7. Yeah, remember those? I want to put on you can still do it with Windows 10 and Windows 11, but anyway, I want a great screensaver on this thing. And I was like, I remember that Stargate screensaver where it was the spinning logo of the SGC that you'd actually see on computers on the show of Stargate SG-1. And I tried looking for it online, and I'm like, you know what? I bet I've got it. I bet I have it in my files. I just got to go back that far, and it's got to be there. And it was. It's so fucking great. And it runs beautifully. So, I really, really give a shit about my data. Okay. And I regularly have to refresh my external hard drive and what I do. And recently, like I had, like an upgrade was needed. And recently, as in we're talking, like over the past couple of years. So I do have a 18 terabyte Western Digital MyBook. That's amazing. 250 megabytes. Now I have an 18 terabyte hard drive next to me. But I do have an 18 terabyte MyBook that I keep. Of course, I also back up to my NAS, which is in a remote location. But, having a slick, like my books sit so nice. They're so compact. And having that sit there, now, it's not something you can take with you on the road because it needs external power, like it needs AC power, or, like an AC plug. It's really handy to have that. And I generally, as quickly as I can, anything I download or make, I offload it. If it needs to go to the NAS, it goes to the NAS, and everything backs up to my Western Digital MyBook, to that 18 terabyte hard drive. I treat just about any computer like a thin client. Just because, what are people going to, especially like when you're on the road or something, if people are going to grab something from you or, steal something from you, like they're going to go for the laptop or they're going to go for the smartphone. They're generally not going to go for the hard drive, right? That's just not as, because it's just this block. It's not as, it's very innocuous, I think. And it's just not something people are necessarily going to look at. Okay. So, and also you can kind of put them anywhere because you don't need to look at them or see them or whatever. So I generally try to get my data over to this hard drive, especially as quickly as possible. Even though I have a 1 terabyte hard drive in this laptop, I want everything over to that 18 terabyte. And, and even if it's something that I still keep on the main laptop, that way I have that backup. But it's important, that's the thing. Like, I don't refresh my computers as often as I refresh my hard drives. Okay. But it's very important to refresh your hard drives. Like, get a new hard drive. Yes, these hard drives, especially NAS drives, are designed to run for, 5 to 10 years to a decade or so. I would frankly, especially if you are running them nonstop, I would refresh your external hard drives probably every 3 years or so, 3 to 5. Even if your other hard drive's not going bad, fine. Then you get another backup or something like that, or you can give it to a kid or what, I don't know. Okay. But if you care about your data, you got to do that. But it looks good. It's a very minimalist setup that I have here with, the big hard drive right there, the 14-inch laptop with the smartphone hanging off the side. And then another thing, in fact, this is what I think originally prompted this question from this email from a listener, was I talked about laptop fans. Now, there are people who say that laptop fans are absolute bullshit. They are so fucking dead wrong. They are completely wrong. Laptop fans, absolutely, in my opinion, they're a necessity. If you have a regular desk setup and you regularly run a laptop, whether you're, running HDMI to a bigger, monitor, or you're just running the laptop itself, in which case you can set it up in a more ergonomic fashion with the fan, which is nice because, it can be at an angle. A laptop fan I consider absolutely essential. Now, where a laptop fan is bullshit is if the fans in your laptop are dying or dead. Okay, a laptop fan is not going to replace that. Like, they're just not close enough to the hardware. They're not close enough to the CPU, and they're not directly, in any way connected to the North Bridge via piping or anything like that. But as far as the longevity of your computer, it will absolutely increase the longevity of your laptop. Laptop coolers, like cooling fans, phenomenal, wonderful things. I'll put a link into the show notes, just so you can see what a good one looks like. Sometimes you can get them where they even have USB hubs on them. That's a nice little feature to have, to expand the amount of USB ports you have. But anyway, that's essentially what my workstation looks like. As far as my microphone, I mean, I've talked about this a billion times. I use, right now I'm using the Zoom H1N, and that's all that I'm using. I try to get a richer sound out of post-processing in Audacity, but that's all that I'm using. So it's a very slim, frankly, very minimalist setup. Especially, it's funny because this desk I am at is gigantic, but the actual area that I work within is very tiny. And that's all that I have. And I do use a mouse with a mouse pad. Mouse pads are still valid, by the way. I do use a mouse. I have a Microsoft, their latest IntelliMouse, because the IntelliMouse is the greatest mouse design ever. It's a fact of life. And I do have that. But that's my desk setup. But if anything that you take away from this, getting your laptop on a cooling fan is, again, in my opinion, essential. And especially for when you're not at the desk, having the arm for your smartphone to attach to your laptop, I think is a pure winner as far as something to go forward, as far as allowing for a better workflow. If your smartphone is a major part of your workflow, which it is for me. If it's not for you, well, then it doesn't matter and you don't need that and you're doing life right. But there you go. Anyway, that was, again, response, listener's choice. You get to control this part of the show. Got this in an email and thought that I would go ahead and cover it here, and we'll be right back. And it's nice to not have, well, no, I guess I did yell about Ubuntu. I was going to say it's nice to have a segment where I'm not yelling, but I did still yell, didn't I? Fucking canonical. Anyway, I'll be back with more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovereigntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovereigntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
Shall we play a game?
It is the second half of the show, which means it's time to talk some video games, baby. And I want to be clear first. Like, in that whole segment that I just talked about, any of the links that I shared with you that are Amazon links, I get no cut from those. Nothing. Like, you can check the links. There is, or at least as far as I can, control it, there is no tracking on those. It is not something where somehow you're shopping through my link and I get a cut or anything. I mean, it's not happening. If anyone's getting a cut, it's probably through Amazon Smile, and in that case, for me, it'd be the Tor project, and that's it. Which, why wouldn't you support that? Now, what we're about to talk about for our gaming segment is also not, like, there's no links here, okay? I'm not selling you something. All I want to tell you about is a good time. And this is a game that I want to go out there. I want to be out there on the record of, saying how I feel about it. Because when this originally came out in 2016, my thoughts were incredibly negative, but really it didn't even have to deal with the game. So I want to get into this, okay? We're talking about No Man's Sky. So No Man's Sky, this is technically what you'd call a survival game, an action-adventure survival game. It was made by Hello Games, which was basically an independent company when they did this. This game got a lot of coverage because what it is, you're one person flying around the galaxy, and I mean that, and landing on planets. And the galaxy that you're flying within is procedurally generated, as in, like, it's unique for every time that you play it, and it's supposedly an endless universe, not just galaxy, but an endless universe that you can explore. You can explore it forever, find new planets forever. Now, in 2016, and when it was getting developed through much of like 2013 into 2016, I think it had at least a 3-year development period. But while it was getting developed, like, there was so much hype around it because the way it was being billed, the way it was marketed, was that this was an entire universe being developed within a game. And so a lot of people got excited about it because they're, I don't want to say crazy. They're confused in that they think our universe is a simulation, the one you and I live in. And so they considered No Man's Sky to be proof that even with today's computer technology, a simulated universe is possible. Now, none of that is true. And again, Hello Games was an indie developer. There was no way they could deliver on that promise. And when this game came out in 2016, I mean, the hype machine was so hot. The expectations were so high, it couldn't possibly live up to it. I mean, nothing could. And it didn't. Like at the time when it came out, it didn't, and I didn't care. And I haven't bothered with the game. I don't give a shit. But a key point that I've even talked about like on TIE Fighter Renegades with Rob, is a game today, the way games are developed, and really this is true the way anything's developed today as far as computer software. But games today, like when they get released, they're not finished. None of them are. Seemingly none of them are. Now, I mean, when I release a game, and I have, when I release a game, it's fucking finished. Right? I mean, there's always bugs that can be fixed, but I don't know. And it's not laziness. I just think a game should come out ultimately, and whatever bugs are there are like tricks of the game and they become legends, kind of like whatever weird glitch worlds exist in Super Mario Brothers 2 or something, right? Anyway, that's not how things work today. Today, really, you don't know how good a game is until like 3 years later or even longer. Again, this came out in 2016 for PC, came out in 2018 for Xbox, I think, well, particularly Xbox One. Then in 2020, it would come out for the Series X, then it would come out for the PS5. And then finally this month, October 2022, it has come out for the Nintendo Switch. I was able to get my hands on it for the Nintendo Switch, and I have had some time to play on it. And here's the thing. I was very critical of this game, having not even played it, but I was critical of it because of the fact that it didn't deliver on its promise and because I get endlessly annoyed by people who are into, the simulation theory of the universe. That just boggles the mind how people come to those conclusions. Anyway, I want to say now, in 2022, no, this game is fucking awesome. Not that I've played it for, 40 hours or anything like that, but the hours that I have had with it, even if it only did what I've done so far, this game is amazing. It's really, really, really slick. I described it in the Sovryn Tech Patreon-only Discord. I described it as it's like Metroid Prime and Zelda Breath of the Wild mixed into one. Because it has all of the exploratory features of, not that it's a first-person shooter, it's more of a third-person, and it's not really, it doesn't have to be a shooter at all, which I love that. But it has all the exploratory aspects of like Metroid Prime. But also, if I were to attach it to another game, there are legendary games like Battle Cruiser 3000 AD, where it was supposed to be, okay, you can land on a planet, you can control a starfighter, and then you can even control like a battle, a battle cruiser, like a gigantic starship. And that was a game that came out over 20 years ago. High ambitions, right? Well, No Man's Sky, unlike Battle Cruiser 3000 AD, which I throw no shade at that whatsoever, or Derek Smart for making it. I love the ambition that they had, really. And the lack of hype machine was great too. But anyway, No Man's Sky has had, 5-6 years to get to the point that it's at now, which it also recently had a major update called Waypoint. And now it can start to live up to some of that hype. And I have to say, it's fucking amazing. I can see myself getting 40 hours deep into this and thinking that this is like a top 10 game ever made. Nothing's going to take TIE Fighter, but it's going to get up there. Like, just the sense of exploration and the free-forming nature of it, where you can just take off on a starship like it's nothing, just like you would in quote-unquote, say, real life. Not that we have starships right now, or at least not that we have access to those starships, but, you could take off, go through the atmosphere, do the whole thing, land it. This is a dream game. Dream game if you lived in the 90s anyway. That you could do all of this with, a graphical style that certainly has some surrealness to it, but, has fidelity. And I think it's a brilliant game. And it did just come out for the Switch. Being able to play it portably is an amazing thing. If you got a Steam Deck, okay, great. You got a Steam Deck. Woo. But having it on Switch, I think I hope it does amazing numbers on the Switch, because it deserves to. And it's incredible that a game this big was ported to the Switch as well. Full featured. Like that's amazing in itself. But just a phenomenal game. This is something, so, with gaming, yeah, I have all the retro consoles, or, I have a lot of them anyway. But, for me, like, my modern system is the Switch. And the beauty of doing that just to get this out of the way, is, I mean, I still get to play these massive games, like Witcher 3, and I mean, they might be older, but so what? That's just given them time to be perfected. The beauty of being able to play these massive games, play them portably, and to not have to worry about the fucking upgrade cycle of my computer. Or, as to where just a few years ago, I'd be like, oh man, the new 1060 Ti or whatever from NVIDIA, I got to get that. I have to have a laptop with that in it. To get out of that cycle is a wonderful thing for your mental health and, I would argue for your health in general, but anyway, also for your wallet. But anyway, for the Switch, it plays beautifully on that as well. So I want to review, the version of the Switch as much as anything, because again, it is such a gigantic game, and for it to do so well and the controls to feel pretty good on there. I could definitely see moments where, boy, I wish I had a mouse. But it's fine. Like it's worth it to have it in such a pocketable format. So anyway, No Man's Sky, check it out. It's only gotten better. And frankly, I hope Hello Games is developing this baby for the next 15 years. In fact, it'd be great if they just opened up the code whenever they're done with it and let the modding community just fucking take over. Kind of like the amazing things that people are doing with the Wii U version emulated of Breath of the Wild, on PC, where they're making whole other adventures out of that. That's totally worth your time. So I hope the same thing ends up happening with No Man's Sky, because this is, I can pretty safely say it. This is going to be like one of the top 10 greatest games of all time, in my opinion. All right, that is it for our bit of our gaming segment, and we've got plenty more to get into. This is Sovryn Tech.
Journey into the far reaches of aquaspace.
Attention, security breach.
Brace for impact. Seal outer doors. Rig for collision.
Launch countermeasures.
From Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment Inc. and Universal Television comes a journey into the future and beneath the sea. Roy Scheider stars in Sequest DSV.
You can watch Sequest by downloading it from your favorite torrent site or getting it on glorious DVD. For beneath the surface lies the future.
Come on!
Album of the Week.
It is time for Album of the Week, and do we have, frankly, a pick out of left field here. Really new band. This is only their second album, but I'm impressed on what I'm hearing. The band is called April Art, so like the month, April, and then the word art, A-R-T. Their second album here, which just came out this month in 2022, is called P.O.K.E.R.F.A.C.E. But it's with, it's an acronym, like there's a period after each letter. So it's P, period, O, period, K, period, P.O.K.E.R.F.A.C.E. And 15 tracks. I don't want to call it a concept album, even though it has they do some interesting little interludes and everything, which is nice. It gives it a bit of an epic feel. It's female fronted. Great. And it really, this has a real rebellious anarchist energy to it. I mean, it really does. I guess you would call it maybe metalcore, even though now the gal, I wouldn't necessarily say she sings with a harmony. She has kind of a guttural voice. It's not screamo though. It's sort of in the middle there. And I like it a lot. Great attitude, great messages in the songs overall, and pretty heavy. With this, you get some synth in there, at points. It's kind of like Amaranth, one of my favorite bands. It has somewhat of a similar feel, vibe to Amaranth, but if Elise Ridd, had more of a guttural, if Elise Ridd sang Wendy O. Williams or something, right? So definitely worth your time if you like that kind of harder edge with a message. And I do dig that. And without it going into kind of death metal or like screamo as far as like, with the singing. Not that I mind that. I just prefer, where I can understand more of what they're saying and where there's just some kind of edge to the voice, that's not just bleh, right? You know what I mean? Like I like it. So anyway, April Art, new band. I like the fresh stuff. I anytime a new band can bring in you say it more of a classic attitude, I'm there, and they do that with P.O.K.E.R.F.A.C.E. Check it out. I think you're going to like it, and we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech.
From Big Finish Productions, P.O.K.E.R.F.A.C.E, the classic audio adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall. Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
My name is Avon. Avon.
Avon.
Our hostage arrives. But you may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
You can go to Blake7.com to find more of the new adventures of one of science fiction's greatest masterpieces, Blake 7, at Blake7.com.
The Ancient and the Strange.
It is time for The Ancient and the Strange, and has been very popular. I am going to read from the Sovryn Technica newsletter. Of course, with the Sovryn Technica newsletter, I have the spirituality segment. And as I've been describing over the past few episodes of Sovryn Tech, that there's a lot of groundwork that I want to lay, that I want to do before we start discussing the actual subjects I really want to get into with the Ancient and the Strange segment of the show. Again, I'm not going to do every spirituality segment for every issue of the Sovryn Technica newsletter that I've written, but like I'm not going to get into the naturism one. I have other ones like on pacifism and whatever that I have put together, that those I'm not going to get into here. But again, ones that set up the groundwork, okay, of what spirituality means to me and what it can mean if you want it, I think is important to get down here. That way, that whenever we're talking about matters that could be considered esoteric, mystical, whatever, no one on Sovryn Tech anyway, is talking about a god, because there is no god. No one is talking about any kind of appeals to a sky daddy or anything along those lines. And that's really important. And it's something I want to lay out here with the piece that I wrote titled Spiritual Anarchy. Now, I want to be abundantly clear that I am not, with the term spiritual anarchy, that's just the title, of a segment of a newsletter. I am not creating some kind of new form of anarchism here. Okay? I am not. So I just want to make sure that's totally clear. But with that clear, let's make some other things clear around the subject of spirituality. And this is from issue 5 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. Here we go. Spiritual Anarchy. Spiritual Anarchy. I'm going to admit some things to you that in most writings filed under a spirituality segment would come off as crass or anathema. Granted, I have a PhD in anathema and am fluent in crass language, so perhaps that's why I'll get away with it, but I just wanted to prepare you. Here we go. I hate praying. I think it's utter madness to either speak aloud or say in your head some far-out wishes you have to some non-existent, okay, fine, I'll give you dubious, sky daddy expecting this to do anything whatsoever for you or anyone else, other than them looking at you in proper bewilderment of why you'd lay your lifestyle fantasies so bare. To be clear, words do have power when spoken, the correct words, that is, and expressing gratitude is a wonderful thing to do, even if it's just to yourself. But when most people think about prayer, it's usually a case of rubbing the genie bottle with your word vomit and hoping your wishes will come true. Pray harder. It might work. Or maybe it'll be like voting, because, just vote harder and your favorite too ugly for Hollywood schmuck will win. More wishful thinking. Newsflash. When voting, no matter who wins, the populace loses. While the conversation of how the concept of prayer began is something for another time, let's just say if, to quote Garth Brooks, you should sometimes be thankful for unanswered prayers, that's implicitly saying that prayer is meaningless even if you do believe in a sky daddy. Moving right along. Synagogue/church/temple services. The gatherings of wise men, they say. Poppycock. More like the gathering of wise guys passing around the plate and trying to get a free lunch. Sorry, my spirituality feeds me of its own accord and merit. But forget about the plate. Let's talk about the absolute boredom of these services. Unless you enjoy the particular roleplay of a Tridentine Mass, it's better than World of Warcraft, I suppose. Stand up, sit down, stand up, get on your knees, sit back down, try not to blow ass, stand up, sing, oh hell, not the voice of little Billy in the back pew, it's like scratching plates, go shake hands, pretend you have things in common with these people beyond your collective belief that somehow you get a reward for going through this Sabbath/Sunday charade. Thanks, I'll pass. And how about these more liberal religious services? Give me a break. They'll say anything to get people in the door and comfortable while claiming the authority of ancient tradition. How can I expect to find any truth in that kind of doublespeak? I'd rather be outside in nature actually engaging in my individual spiritual practice on a day off instead of getting inundated with other distractions in some stuffy building. Note. Put a pin on that practicing outside in nature thing, by the way. We'll get to that in the future. End note. Let's keep going. Look, I love the Tanakh. I mean it. Just the way you can carry it around in such compact, beautiful editions and effectively have the wisdom and history of the ancients that span hundreds, if not thousands of years is an amazing thing. But here's the problem. That wisdom and the real history being covered is largely mired in coded language, either on purpose or unawares. The really golden stuff that's not as covered in coded language doesn't come until much later in the compiled text, i.e. the books of Job, Ezekiel, Isaiah, the Song of Songs, and some others. And even the most eager student may never explore these precious texts because everything they read beforehand seems problematic at best on face value. I could go on, but 3 is enough for the point. And my point is, despite all of my complaining and distaste for the above, all 3 have something special to them. It's almost ineffable, but even if they're implemented wrong, there is an odd, compelling quality to them. Is that quality that it's just all ancient tradition? Maybe. But I'm going to argue it's something else. A major part of one's expression of spirituality is the act of truth-seeking. But as Pilate famously asked, what is truth? Truth is, by many's theory, what is known as the correspondence theory of truth. This idea states that the truth, or falsity of a statement, is determined only by how it relates to the world and whether it accurately describes, i.e. corresponds with, that world. Meaning that if you and many others saw a meteor hit the Earth, you're justified in saying that it occurred. That's a simplistic example, but it'll do. The point is, truth is something discovered by crucible of contrast. This is where things like prayer, religious services, and holy books come in. They are the collectivist things you contrast your individualist spiritual experience against. They are the crucible you hammer out your truth against. Much like an anarchist can use the laws, government babble, and civilization surrounding them to practice, clarify, and hone his rebellious craft of existence against, these collectivist institutions are paradoxically both your greatest spiritual fortress, protecting the high notes of spiritual existence down through the ages, and your greatest limiting factor in your spiritual growth. I'm arguing that the specialness you see and feel in acts like prayer, organized religious practice, and certain revered texts is not the things themselves, but it's your recognizing they are opportunities to subvert the collective that seeks to subsume your spiritual uniqueness. Does this mean throw away the Tanakh? No. But to grow spiritually, you have to engage in subversion against its traditions while still, again, paradoxically, remaining in its fold. This is spiritual anarchy, my friend. I'm reminded of something the Kabbalist Isaac Luria said in the 16th century. Quote, every word of the Torah has 600 faces, that is, layers of meaning or entrances, one for each of the children of Israel who stood at the foot of Mount Sinai. Each face is turned toward only one of them. They alone can see it and decipher it. Each person has their own unique access to revelation. End quote. Revelation, spiritual truth as it were, can only truly be experienced by the individual. This spiritual anarchism working against the authoritarian collective is, as one author put it, quote, the wish to find the godless God and an outlaw's law and a revelation that could be stolen from the guilt vaults of orthodoxy, broken up, and redistributed among the poor in faith. End quote. As I've said many times on Sovryn Tech, if religion were to have a sole purpose, it is to enhance the human experience. Anything that no longer serves that purpose in a tradition is to be cut away and considered a waste. So appreciate and respect the orthodox institutions and traditions that guide you to see your truth. Then, subvert them. And that is from issue 5 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. Like I said, when I use, especially at the end there, when I use the phrase spiritual anarchism, no one's making a new anarchism here. Not at all. Okay? What is being hammered out, like described in the segment that I wrote, what's being hammered out is just the truth and what usefulness there is in traditions and institutions, and then what to do when you do find that usefulness going forward, which of course comes from subversion. I don't need to spend a whole ton of extra time on this, but this is, in Judaism, which of course, I consider myself, Dr. Brian Sovryn, consider myself very knowledgeable in many religions. I don't know that any one human could truly know them all, because there's so many that I'm sure we haven't even discovered yet or that have come and gone. But with Judaism, one of the key tenets of the Talmud is to question everything within that book. Just to question it all. So and this idea of subverting what's within it, the Talmud in many ways subverts itself, but of course it's an incredibly complex book. But the very first thing that I would defy is, any faith, any religion, any spirituality that doesn't allow for intellectual rigor, and not just rigor, but at its core, questioning every core concept. And if it doesn't allow for that, well, I don't think that has anything to do with spirituality. That just has to do with control, dominance over your own spirit. We'll be back with more Sovryn Tech. We've got an interesting climax, I think. And we'll be back with more. Woo!
The most incredible television event ever, as you join the crew of Battlestar Galactica.
Right here, you creepy crawly. I have led the entire human race to ruin.
The last of mankind, fighting for life in a hostile galaxy.
Most of us are dead.
Alone, with only one hope, Battlestar Galactica and her crew.
There is no other destination.
Commander Adama, Captain Apollo, the intrepid Starbuck, and the dazzling Athena, searching for a new and peaceful world.
May as well live for today. We might not have many left. Let the attack begin.
A new age of high adventure, Battlestar Galactica.
The Golden Stallion doing whatever he wants to do. The Climax.
It is time for the Climax, where I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Now, lately, admittedly, we've talked a lot about movies. We have gotten in kind of some, topics and conversations, but even those I feel like had to do with movies a bit. So I want to change it up this week. And I want to get into a topic that's kind of talking about a technology, or what's kind of a technology. That being clothing. You may wonder, like, what the hell am I doing talking about clothing? Well, this wouldn't be the first time that I've talked about clothing. In fact, about a decade ago, I remember reading a story by one of my journalistic heroes, that being Mike Elgin, who also was a guest on Sovryn Tech years ago. I should see about having him on again. But he wrote up an article many, many years ago talking about how our technology has outpaced our clothing. You know, we talk a lot on Sovryn Tech about how, like, mentally, humans are not ready for the level of technology that we have. Well, our clothing isn't ready for the level of technology that we have. Not a new statement for this show. And admittedly, like, it's a statement made, again, inspired by Mike Elgin. But I want to talk about it again, partly because, you know, it's October, Halloween's coming, baby. And, you know, I even recently, I've had friends who, like, they'll spend all fucking year getting their costume ready, you know, getting their outfit and whatever ready for Halloween. And I know, I mean, I'm aware of a lot of people like that, where they plan all fucking year for Halloween and getting that perfect set of clothing ready, you know, and all of this. And, you know, I got to admit, it makes me ask a question. And this isn't my only point that I'm going to get into. I want to get into a few things here. But I ask myself the question, like, if you're that excited about what you're going to wear on Halloween, why not dress like that all the time? Like, and, you know, again, like I mentioned, yeah, I grew up in a Jewish household. We didn't do Halloween. Like, not that we called it of Satan, right? Because Satan's a bit of a different character in Judaism. Actually, a very different character. But Halloween just wasn't a part of the program, right? You know, we had Purim and Hanukkah and you know, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and all. We did all those, but I mean, fuck, our calendars aren't even the same. Like, what are you talking about? We're in the year 5000. Anyway, yeah, I didn't really do Halloween that much. I mean, there were odd years where it, for whatever reason, it would end up happening. And myself, I would usually end up, like, making my own thing. I didn't always get to, you know, dress as you know, someone else or something else. But regardless, I'm not necessarily here to talk about me in that sense. I find it strange, because it seems for some to be like such an obsession. And I'm not saying that disparagingly. I'm just saying that, like, okay, if there's a certain way you like to dress, like, then why not do that all the time? Now, of course, you know, many of us have professional lives where there is a code of conduct. There are standards, you know, that you kind of have to follow, but then you don't have to do that outside of work. You know, you don't have to follow those codes of conduct unless it's the military, even then. I find it a strange thing. But also, it's not just that. Like, I feel like there's a general uncomfortability around clothes right now, particularly in the 21st century. Like, we're wearing clothes designed in, at best, like the 19th century, maybe early 20th. But probably like, jeans haven't changed at all. Nobody wears pocket watches anymore, but, you know, we still have the pocket watch pocket in our jeans for some goddamn reason. It's a topic I kind of want to revisit in that, and because here's what's weird, right? So to some degree, some like companies like, say, Wrangler or even Levi's, or, you know, more, well, companies that design for, like, NASA or the military, say like MA1, you know, Alpha Industries and so on. You know, they came up with, like, cargo pants, right? And cargo shorts. And I find it so odd that these things are insulted on the regular and are told, oh, that's ugly. Oh, that's this. When it's like, no, that's the only thing you can fucking wear so that you can actually sit down without having to put your, like we talked about earlier, like, without having to put down, you know, your smartphone on the table. Like, Like, we have to carry around so much. It's frankly insane to make fun of clothing that allows us to actually carry these things around with us. I don't know. In fact, I have to admit, I mean, I carry around a traditional wallet. When you used to have to carry around like quite a bit of cash, I don't know how guys sat down with that on their ass. Like I've seen some pretty thick wallets in my day, and I don't know how that happened. But boy, you have cargo pants and everything's fine. Or better yet, how about this? Let's do middle of the road, shall we? Instead of cargo pants, because, oh, fuck, they're so terrible, right? They're not. I love them. But, for most of human history, so we're talking thousands and thousands of years, you know what was standard garb on guy and gal? A satchel of some kind. Some kind of carrying bag on guy and gal was wildly, wildly common. The only places it wasn't common would perhaps be, and even then I would argue is still common, would be in like the cities of, like the major cities of Rome or Greece. But even then, I still think that they were incredibly common, even though you might not see them in, I don't know, whatever book you happen to pick up about ancient Greece or something, and the way you see them dress and everything. Those are very stylized representations. If you were looking at everyday, people walking around Athens, they'd probably all be carrying some kind of satchel. Men would be carrying purses, and I'm not kidding. They really would. And they'd put makeup on too. How about that? And that's what I wonder. Now, the idea of the man bag, right? I know that's a term for a reason, because it's something that's kind of come back. Here, like, at the same time, if you've read the Sovereign Technica newsletter, now I'm not really arguing for wearing clothing at all, ultimately, right? Because I think we're actually inherently, like our skin, many of us anyway, are inherently allergic to clothing, as in we have an allergic reaction to just the rubbing on our skin. Doesn't matter what the fibers are. Also, the clothing that, frankly, that gets made today is shit anyway, most of the time. Unless you get from a very, like, specialty realtor, and that's certainly something to talk about. But I would actually argue, I think that the purse, satchel, bag, whatever, and it doesn't, and I get it. Like, I don't like having to carry around, like, a backpack all the time either. Okay, I'm not necessarily arguing for that. And I know we have, and see, this is the problem, because I would actually argue for, like, always carrying, a backpack or something, but you get searched, just about anywhere you go. Okay, as to where, if you had something that was slimmer, something more akin to a purse, but that could hold, your smartphone, maybe a pocket knife, even though that one, you got to be careful where you're taking that into, right? But could hold, I don't know, all kinds of things. Chapstick, sex lube. It could hold, well, here's another thing. Like, we should be used to carrying around, not just smartphones, but like, really like solid communication devices, like radios. Like right here, I have my, my Baofeng, UV, 5R Mark V. Love this thing to death. Not very easy to carry around even on your waist, even though I have like a MOLLE pouch that I could put it on, around a belt or whatever, but attach it to something that is akin to a, well, I would argue, a very macho purse, kind of looks like a tactical purse of sorts. And that works great. And you can have a water bottle right there and everything. My point being, in our modern civilization, I feel like in general, there's so much that we need to carry around with us. And even to be healthy, I mean, fuck, do you want to drink the water from just about anywhere you go? And do you want to constantly be buying plastic bottles that are just putting a bunch of microplastics all over the place and what are contributing to all kinds of other environmental issues? What's the best thing to do? I mean, fuck, you can't even drink the rainwater anymore, right? On Earth. That's how screwed we fucking are. Okay. So doesn't it make sense to constantly have a water bottle around with you, with water that you are more confident in, among other things? Yeah, I think it does. But that requires a change in what I would argue, I guess, would be culturally accepted attire. Or what culturally promoted. How about that? Promoted attire. Maybe that's better, because I think a lot of people wouldn't mind. And that's the thing. I've walked around, I've had this thing that, and if I think of it, I'll put a link in the show notes. Again, I make no money off of this, off of you clicking on these links. We're just talking about practical, actionable items, right? If I think of it, I'll put a link in the show notes for this, and you can see what I'm talking about. And I love it because it has the the Molly webbing, so you can attach pouches and whatever else you want to it. It's not that heavy. It can easily hold the. Well, again, we don't have a choice now. We have to buy giant ass smartphones, right? They don't even sell small ones, at least not ones that are updated with the right software. You could carry around a laptop bag all the time, I suppose, and most people wouldn't mind that either. And that's certainly an option. But this is something I think that to be able to keep with us the appropriate technology, the technology perhaps that we should be using, or the items or whatever that it would be a good idea, either for, health concerns or just being prepared or whatever, to have around with us. I think getting used to the ancient concept of the satchel again is a very good thing. Even something like, and I might be weird in this, and maybe it just comes from my teenage years, but I remember going to a science fiction convention. I was 18, and I got invited, to go to another country. And we'll just put it that way. I got invited to go to another country, with people that I really would have loved to have gone with. And I didn't have my passport with me, to be able to do that. And so I'm like, fuck. Well, I can't go. It's not going to work. And this is already after kind of learning my lesson from being stowed away in Canada for a few months. So, so I wasn't going to play with fire, at that time. But after that, oh man, pretty much any time I was going somewhere, if I'm going to the store, I guess who cares, but anytime I was going somewhere, I had my fucking passport with me because I wasn't going to miss an opportunity like that ever again. But, a passport is kind of large. Yes, if you're a larger guy, I can get away with wearing a passport wallet at all times if I wanted to now, I suppose. But not everybody can do that. But, if you're carrying around your bag, yeah, you can have your passport with you at all times. Some people want to get into there's security risks with that. I should be locking up my passport and all that stuff. Nah, I don't necessarily see that. I understand the old arguments around that sort of thing. But today with digital ID and, anyway, it's a different world as far as that goes. So I don't really see that as a necessity. But regardless, this all gets to the point that in the modern world we live in, wearing 19th century, 20th century clothes just isn't cutting it. To say nothing of the quality of that shit. Okay. And even if you were a nudist or a naturist along, of that vein, you could totally carry around a bag of some kind, a satchel, with a shoulder strap, the whole business. Nothing wrong with that. So either way you look at the future or the present, I think getting used to everybody effectively carrying around what we could call a purse is a damn good thing to go forward with. And because, these companies are not slowing down on the size of these phones. Now they're folding them. They want you to have such large devices with you at all times. Now they're, doing the Galaxy Z Fold, right? so you have this massive beast. And who knows, it might get to the point where you just carry around a Bluetooth keyboard and, in the near future. But again, how the fuck are you going to do that in a pair of jeans? So either get used to cargo pants or cargo shorts, or like I say, I think getting used to carrying around a bag. you know, in my dream world, everybody's carrying around a radio. Walkie-talkie. Everybody's doing that. I don't know that the world's ever going to be that way, but it'd be fine if it was. And yeah, like, you know, at the same time, you don't always want to be walking around like looking like you're a policeman or something along those lines. I mean, that gets into a whole other conversation too, that I could talk about, more utilitarian clothing. I mean, that speaks to the overall, abstract of what we're getting into here. It's a necessity today. I am baffled, like when I go to, I don't know, any store, anywhere where like a clothing store of any kind, or I don't know, a Walmart or something like that. And you see all of these, you see all the models, male, female, whatever. Okay. You see all these models and everything. And, they're wearing all of this stylish clothing. And I'm just, you look at it and you go, yeah, but where did they put their smartphone? and there's no way they're not walking around without it. Like, these people, they're vain as fuck. That's why they're on a poster in the first place. And it's such a laugh. It's such a holdover from, a time past. Now, if you've gotten to the point in life where you don't need a smartphone, hey, fucking dynamite. Like, hats off to you. And you don't need a hat, I would imagine. But really, hats off to you on living that life. And, maybe you can get away with all you have in your pocket is a credit card or something. I don't know if you've done that great. But most people, no, they've got a lot of stuff that they probably want to carry around with them. I know a lot of listeners of this show. I know a lot of you are already carrying around your, your Merces, your man bags, whatever the hell you want to call them. And you're already on top of that. But I think that's something, if you're not already doing it, let's push this into the socially acceptable arena, shall we? Fuck social acceptability. Again, we're all about nonconformity here. But at the same time, like, let's get it in their faces, and maybe we can help people out, because boy, do I hate it when I see people like fumbling through, and dropping their phone and all this. And no, really, I do. Like, you're just watching people set themselves up for aggravation when they just had a nice bag, boop, everything goes in and out. So anyway, that's kind of the point I wanted to get to. There's more that could be said on this, and I'm sure I'm going to explore it at some point. But clothing is something that really, everybody's like, oh yeah, NFTs are disrupting fashion and all this stuff. Well, I don't want NFTs to disrupt fashion. I want like fashion to catch up with where most of us are at, as far as what we carry around with us, and, what we need to just get our shit done. Because by and large, it's not there. And frankly, again, I'll say it, fuck all the people who think that cargo pants and cargo shorts are ugly. And, when I see people wearing cargo shorts and cargo pants, and like there's actually shit in their pockets, and it's not just some kind of like, because there are also people who want to make weird fashion statements for no good reason. I think they're very practical people. And I'm like, well, gee, I might want to get to know this person, because, they got their shit together in their pockets. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Sovryn Tech. I hope a lot of actionable things to walk away with. It's not just me yelling and complaining or whatever else, but like there's actually things you get to go forward and do. How about that? So we'll wrap up this episode of Sovryn Tech, episode 495, and I will see all of you next week. I will see all of you on the other side. Woo!